Hello, and today, I'm going to be telling you a story of a boy by the name of Hunter. It's going to be all about Hunter's life, but I'm warning you guys that this story will be drama, comedy, emotional, war, and even anger. Anyways, let's begin. Hunter, a life in light and shadow. Chapter 1. The first day of summer. On June 5th, 1911, Google was enveloped in a warm light. The sun streamed in through the window of the small wooden house at Bryn's, where the cry of a newborn baby had just broken the morning silence. It was a strong, persistent cry, one that immediately made the midwife smile. "He has lungs like a trumpeter," she said, placing the boy in her mother's arms. The mother, Signe, was pale but smiling. She gently stroked the damp hair from her little forehead and looked with a tear in her eye at the child, who was now sucking on her little clenched fist. "He's going to be called Hunter," she whispered. The father, Carl, sat at the foot of the bed with his hands clasped, and when he heard the name he looked up. At first he seemed to hesitate, as if the memory was too heavy to bear, but then he nodded slowly. "After my brother," he said, his voice barely audible. "After Oscar Hunter." Oscar had fallen 2 years earlier in the fighting at Narvik, barely 22 years old. He had been more than a brother to Carl. He had been his friend, his reflection, his safety net. When the news came that Oscar would never return home, something changed in Carl, and now there lay a new life with the same name, with the same expectations and hopes. For the first week of his life, Hunter was like all babies, screaming, hungry, curious about the world, but unable to understand it. But there was something special about his eyes, the midwife said. "He looks right into your soul," she murmured, as if she had seen something she could not put into words. When Hunter was 3 weeks old, he saw his home for the first time with open eyes. The small 2-room house and kitchen smelled of yeast, wood smoke, and freshly washed sheets. Signe carried him from room to room, pointing to windows, furniture, jam jars, and their old cat curled up on the kitchen sofa. "This, little Hunter, is our world," she said. "Here you will crawl, run, fall, and get up. Here you will live," and he did. At 6 months old, he learned to crawl not with the caution other children display, but with a determination that made the whole house tremble. He moved like a little steamroller across the floor, heading straight for anything that made a strange sound, flashed or smelled. It wasn't long before he was sinking his teeth into shoes, flower pots, logs of wood, and even, once, his father's snuff-box lid. When he was 9 months old, he took his first steps, wobbled, stumbled, but with a triumphant expression as if he had just conquered the world. Carl, who rarely smiled, burst into laughter when Hunter fell straight into the cat's food bowl and looked up with food scraps in his hair. "He's like a little general," laughed Carl, "with more will than sense," and maybe that was so. For Hunter showed an early inclination to want more than he could, to push boundaries, to defy prohibitions, to explore the forbiddens. Once, no more than 11 months old, he managed to pry open the door to the porch while his mother was hanging out washing. He crawled out, grabbed the threshold, and pulled himself up, laughing loudly at the wind in his face and the fluttering shadows from the trees. When Signe turned around and saw that the door was ajar, panic set in. She rushed out and found him halfway down the stairs, with one foot dangling in the air. "Hunter," she shouted, a heart in her throat. He just laughed. After that incident, a hook was put higher on the door, and Hunter got a homemade gate in the doorway to the kitchen. But that only helped temporarily. Within a few weeks, he had learned to stack firewood to reach the hook. "We didn't give birth to a child," Carl sighed one evening. "We gave birth to a revolutionary leader." But even revolutionary leaders have their weaknesses, and for Hunter it was called a milk tooth. His first tooth came in at 11 months old and brought with it a screaming like no other. He bit everything he could, including his father's nose, his mother's elbow, and the cat's tail. It was also around this time that he began to say his first words. First came man, closely followed by pap, and then, strangely enough, bap. It turned out to be his name for everything that was round and rolled, balls, plates, Carl. By his first birthday, Hunter was no longer just a baby. He was an individual. A little boy with a strong will, dirty knees, bruises on his elbows, and an eternal curiosity in his eyes. For his birthday, he received a wooden sword from Carl and a home-knitted hat from Signe. He waved his sword, hit the table, shouted "Bap!" and started running in circles until he fell. And in the evening, when the house had become quiet and Hunter lay with his arms outstretched in the crib, Carl and Signe sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee each. "He's not like other children," Signe said quietly. "No," Carl said, "he's a hunter." Outside, the last light of the evening fell over Giggle. The sound of a distant horse-drawn carriage bounced between the house walls, and the wine carried the scent of freshly cut grass. And there, in the little house on Brins, boy lay dreaming his first dreams, perhaps of war and swords, perhaps of running legs and laughing mothers. Or maybe, just maybe, of a world that didn't yet know what awaited. Hunter had begun his journey, and it would be long, beautiful, laughable, and heartbreaking.